Hey, welcome back to the stash. After how great the first issue was, I'll be honest, I came into this one with some pretty high expectations, and thankfully Justice League Unlimited delivers once again. This series is quickly shaping up to be one of the most fun and exciting team books DC has on the shelves right now. Honestly, Mark Waid and Dan Mora feel like such a perfect pairing for a book like this. A creative team that really understands how to balance high-stakes action with real character work. And what I love is that this is a series that doesn't just throw big ideas at you. It actually takes the time to make you care about the people behind the powers. And in a time where a lot of superhero books can feel bloated or unfocused, it's honestly refreshing to get something that feels this tight, this energetic, and this full of heart. And so join us today as we go over Justice League Unlimited Issue 2. Before we get into that though, I want to take a quick second to say that here at The Stash, we're trying to reach 11,000 subscribers before the end of the month. It's a huge ask, but with your help, I know we can do it. So if you like the Justice League or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. But anyway, with all that being said, let's jump right back into the video. So our story begins in Costa Rica. A hive of parademons have made their presence well known within the area, and with Batman and Blue Beetle caught off guard in the previous issue, the rest of the Justice League arrives for their attack. They waste no time battling the parademons. Each member of the League does their best to control the situation, but one gets away and is close to killing an innocent guard. Until, from the darkness, a batarang shoots right into the parademon's back and immediately explodes. And standing there bloodied and battered is the Dark Knight himself. Superman, concerned, asks what happened to him. Batman explains that he and Blue Beetle had found an entire nest ready to hatch within the forest. He lost consciousness, but once he had awakened, Blue Beetle was gone. But he warns Superman. That's not the worst of it. Within a blink of an eye, Batman begins directing members of the Justice League. He sends Wonder Woman and Mary Marvel to shut the nest down, and then he directs Superman, Black Lightning, and Star Sapphire to stay with him here. And lastly, Bruce orders Martian Manhunter and Dr. Occult to go find the missing kids. Meanwhile, though, we see that Adam Smasher managed to get his powers to return to him from one of Waller's Amazos. We then quickly head to the Watchtower to find Mr. Terrific and Stargirl continuing the investigation regarding the Inferno. However, during all of this, Airwave watches on in secret. We go back to Costa Rica. Wonder Woman and Mary plan to carry the entire area up into space, considering it the easiest and safest way possible to end the problem. But as the two begin lifting the terrain up into the sky, a gigantic parademon comes bursting through from under the ground and latches onto Mary Marvel. But at that moment, Martian Manhunter and Dr. Occult get closer to their goal. The two converse, mostly about John's origin. It turns out Occult could have actually exposed Manhunter when he first arrived to Earth, but ultimately chose not to due to the nature of John. In fact, Occult reveals that he also admires him in some ways, but this conversation begins to open up some fresh wounds for Martian Manhunter, for he's been struggling with issues he's kept hidden for a while now. He was uncomfortable telling the League, in fear of being sidelined, but John never fully received all his powers back, and to make it worse, one of those powers is the one the team is currently counting on him to use to find the missing kids. But before Martian Manhunter can continue, they find the parademon guarding the lost children. However, this parademon is not like the others, for he is anything but a mindless beast. He reveals that on Apocalypse, he was the first of his kind to be created self-aware, and so, deemed a perfect choice to watch over the growing nest secreted in Costa Rica, Darkseid exiled him from his native home. But he does hope though that once his task is completed, then perhaps Darkseid will allow him to finally return back. But then Martian Manhunter exclaims that Darkseid is dead. The parademon's face drops completely. The pure shock even results in the kids held in captivity being set free. Dr. Occult goes to save the children while Martian Manhunter deals with the parademon, and it's safe to say that John is ready to explode, and explode he does. Martian Manhunter lashes out, brutalizing the parademon while shutting all his frustrations forth. He doesn't let up. He only gets more violent. Each hit is harder, each exclamation is louder, until finally, the Justice League arrive to hold him back. John, filled with so many emotions, cannot handle what has just happened, what just overtook him. Then, without warning, he leaves the team as he flies off far into the distance. And so our story ends, with Martian Manhunter, hidden someplace unknown, away from the Justice League, trying to make sense of it all. far, we're 2 for 2 when it comes to Justice League Unlimited, and honestly, I couldn't be happier about it. If I'm being real though, when I first saw that Mark Waid was writing this series during his previews, I had a few doubts. Not because Waid isn't capable, the guy's a great writer in his own right, but because a title like Justice League Unlimited naturally carries a lot of expectations. You hear that name and you immediately think of the animated series, and while this comic isn't directly linked to the show, I was still hoping it could somehow capture even a fraction of that magic, and thankfully, after 2 issues, those worries have been put to rest because Mark Waid is doing an incredible job so far. The story here is fun, the pacing is just right, and the team feels alive. There's a real energy to this book that just makes it stand out, a richness to the team dynamic that keeps every page feeling fresh and exciting. It knows exactly when to switch gears and get serious, and when it does, it hits with maximum impact. It strikes a balance that's honestly pretty rare in modern superhero comics. The story in these 2 issues are just pure fun from start to finish. The stakes are huge, as you'd expect when the Justice League is involved, but they're handled with so much confidence that it never feels overwhelming or exhausting. If anything, the way the story leans into the sheer scale without losing the heart of the team is really refreshing. And I love just how big the Justice League feels here. You're not just stuck with the same 5 or 6 characters, you get this massive sprawling roster that opens the door for so many unique and unexpected interactions. You literally never know who's going to show up next, and I love that. How Dr. Occult makes an appearance in this issue, and it's done in a way that feels completely natural as well as crucial to the plot. I adore that sort of thing. It's the kind of world building that makes the DC universe feel huge but still very grounded. Plus, every character feels like they're being written with care. Nobody feels like background noise. Maybe except Blue Beetle as for now, but for the most part, each hero has their voice, their moment, and it makes the whole team dynamic feel that much more rewarding to watch unfold. Now, this issue decided to put the big cliffhanger from the previous release on pause, and honestly, I didn't mind it at all. Sometimes when a comic does that, it can feel frustrating, like it's losing focus, but here I think it actually worked in the story's favor. I am glad though that Mark Waid still made sure to include a page just to show that they haven't forgotten about Airwave and his more sinister plans. It's a small detail, but it is important. It keeps the larger plot simmering in the background without forcing it to compete with the focus of this issue, and that focus being Martian Manhunter. I love that choice. I mean, seriously, who doesn't like John? He's one of those characters that always brings a quiet strength to the Justice League, but he rarely gets the spotlight he deserves. So seeing Waid take the time to really dig into John's character, to explore his mental state and his internal struggles from his origin to the effects of recent events within the DC world, was a real treat to read. And it didn't just skim the surface either. Waid went deep, showing a side of John that we don't really get to see too very often. The way that John's emotion finally boiled over, leading to that rare burst of anger, was handled incredibly well. It felt earned and real. It added so much more weight to the character, and the fallout from that moment leaves the story on an ending that has me completely hooked. It's the kind of emotional payoff that makes you desperate to see what happens next. But I do have to talk about the artwork because once again, it is phenomenal. And I know I probably say that in every video where Dan Mora's art shows up, but seriously, how can I not? This man is an absolute machine. The fact that his quality never drops, not even a little, is honestly one of the most impressive things about him. No matter the project, no matter the schedule, Mora always brings his A game, and this book is no exception. He breathes so much life into Justice League Unlimited. It almost feels like he was born to do this comic. Every page feels vibrant and full of energy. Every character looks distinct and expressive. No one ever feels like an afterthought or just another costume in the background, and when the big moments hit, Mora captures the weight of those scenes perfectly. You can feel the impact in every panel, whether it's an emotional outburst from Martian Manhunter or the sheer scale of the Justice League coming together against a massive threat. I adore how his art doesn't just support the story, it easily elevates it every single time, and it's a huge part of why this comic feels like such a must-read right now. At the end of the day, Justice League Unlimited is shaping up to be one of the most consistently enjoyable books that you can find on comic book store shelves right now. It knows exactly what it wants to be, a big, bold, character-driven team book, and it executes that vision with real confidence. Mark Waid has found a way to balance the sheer scale of the Justice League without losing sight of the individuals who make it special. He's not just throwing characters onto the page for the sake of it. He's giving them voices, giving them moments, and weaving them naturally into stories that both feel fun and meaningful. And while the series carries the same title as the beloved animated show, it isn't trying to mimic it beat for beat. Instead, it captures that spirit, that perfect blend of adventure, heart, and character, and reimagines it in a way that feels fresh and exciting for comics. Honestly, this issue taking a detour to focus more heavily on Martian Manhunter was a brilliant move in my opinion. It gave the story room to breathe and let us dig deeper into a character who often gets overlooked, and ended on a note that leaves you genuinely excited for what's next. It's the kind of emotional depth laid into the larger-than-life superheroics that makes this series stand out. And, of course, Dan Mora's artwork continues to be the engine that brings everything to life. From the energy to the scale to the emotional beats, it all hits that much harder because of how good Mora is at what he does, and honestly, it's hard to imagine anyone else being the artist for this series besides him. Overall, this series feels like a massive love letter to why the Justice League matters. It reminds you that these aren't just superheroes. They're icons within the DC universe. They're symbols of hope, perseverance, and unity, all working together in a world that feels bigger and more alive with every issue. If it can keep this momentum going, then Justice League Unlimited might end up being a strong contender for one of my favorite comic titles of the entire year.